Welcome back. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the 4th South African Investment Conference in Sandton this morning, where he was selling South Africa to potential investors. Pledges are still ongoing, and over 7 billion rand of pledges have already been accumulated, and the target of 1.2 trillion rand is closer to being achieved. eNCA Business Editor Devan Murugan is covering the story for us, and he joins us now live from the convention centre. Devan, of course, the president speaking this morning, trying to convince investors to bring their money to South Africa. Does it look like he's winning in convincing them?
Well, I mean, if you measure that by the investors you see today, obviously they've bought in to much of what the president had said. So, you know, just looking at them here, it seems that way. You speak to investors around here, they'll tell you that, look, you know, the direction that the country is moving in terms of it making it easier to do business for them, is in the right direction. Whether or not it's at a pace that they desire is a completely different question. So let's get on to the pledges. I mean, those pledges are ongoing, as you said, Musefo. We've had a 45 billion rand pledge alone from the African Development Bank. We've had Pfizer, the pharmaceutical company, put through about more than 200 million rand. Some coming in from Netflix, Toyota as well. And we'll accumulate that amount and tell you what it looks like later on in the afternoon. But I think, you know, what's really interesting is that when you look at some of these smaller pledges, if you like, in inverted commas, they really look appealing in a certain sense. Netflix, for example, giving South Africa about 290 million rand, or I think it's 900, I beg your pardon, 900 million rand or thereabout for the creative arts industry. And these are things that often fall off the radar, Masefo. We often talk about the big mining projects, but Netflix is going ahead and taking care of a particular part of the South African community that really has been under the shadows recently. I want to listen to a clip of an interview I did with the Netflix policy director in sub-Saharan Africa, where she talks about why she's looking at South Africa as an investment place and what that 900 million rand pledge is all about. Here's one investor. Let's take a listen.
That the creative industry can actually do a lot in the area of job creation, skills and capacity building, and a lot of the economic deliverables that the administration is trying to achieve, significant amounts of them can come from the creative industry. And that's what we found. Because we talk about our number, right, like 929 million rand in investments. Behind the number is actually people. It's great talent in front of the camera, behind the camera, storytellers, producers, directors, actors, and all of that. But there's another ecosystem. It's the transport people, the caterers, the manufacturers, the retail, the fashion, and all the different elements that go into telling a great story. So for us, this represents an opportunity for the creative industry and, of course, Netflix contributions to move South Africa that much closer to what it wants to achieve on the economic front.
But I believe local business wants sustainable conditions and quicker reforms. Have they voiced their concerns with regards to that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, on that front, Musefo, you know, what's really interesting is that you have the president this morning telling us or conceding that there are challenges with regards to investment in South Africa. Power supply. We know what Eskom is going through. You know that you can't operate a factory when you have intermittent power cuts. That can hold investors back. The ports, the infrastructure outlooks, that hold investors back as well. But he says there are steps that are been taken on all of these fronts that slowly hope to actually reconcile and get South Africa on a better track. But like I said, the pace of those reforms is what troubles local business people. And they say that they do understand the potential of the country, seeing to it that the 12 million unemployed people do find themselves in jobs. But there's an urgency here. There's an urgency that's not really being met with. And I spoke to Busi Mavusa. She's the head of Business Leadership South Africa. And she explains why that urgency to tackle some of the issues around the ports, to tackle some of the issues around policy and labor should be gaining much more traction than it is at the moment. And she explains how South Africa can reap the benefits for that if that pace steps up. Here's Busi Mavusa.
The environment is just not conducive. The system is not working. You know, if you're going to be sitting with almost, depending on which municipality you're operating from, 6 hours of load shedding every day, what does that do to your competitiveness? Would you rather be putting your money here or in Ghana or in Kenya where the system works? If you actually have to export and import, from Maputo when you're sitting in South Africa, because the Durban ports are dysfunctional, those are your answers. The reason why this is not translating into jobs, it's because the Maputo people are getting the jobs, because that is where the consignment is going, and businesses have to spend more money to bring that consignment back into South Africa. So these are real challenges that government is going to have to be awoken to. They have to realize, that the pledges and people standing on podiums is just theatrics. What is going to be important is what do they do to actually deliver on some of those commitments so that you can see investment really trickling in and that being converted into jobs.
Right, Devan, I think the point Busi makes is quite important. I mean, we've seen a lot of businesses, international businesses making pledges. This is the 4th time that this conference is running. They've made pledges before, but I think a lot of South Africans want to know if this money actually does come into the country.
You're quite right, and I think I want to answer that very quickly by just asking Joel, the camera person, to just very quickly pan through here. There are some investors and stands, Mosego, that is very interesting to watch. I mean, you've got the likes of Anglo American, for example, in here. You've got Remgro. These are huge mining resources firms that are putting in millions. I mean, Anglo American just a few moments ago tells us that 40% of its earnings come from South Africa. So while you hear companies investing or disinvesting, there's also a sizable amount of companies in South Africa. So what do they want? They want conditions to be fruitful. And like you said, in order for that to happen, you're going to have a government making some firm decisions on making sure those structural reforms, become a reality. Once that happens, you've got a sense of employing those 12 million people that are not in work at the moment. It's there, it just needs that certain degree of urgency to get rid of the impatience.
All right, business editor here at eNCA Devan Murugan at the Sandton Convention Centre. Let's leave it there for now.